Screwball82 and another movie review of a recent release. The film is Insidious. First of all, apologies to anyone who's actually watching my videos and keeping up with them. Please subscribe so that I know, first of all, but apologies for the delay in making this one. Just been a bit busy recently. That's a lie, I've not been busy, I've just been not bothering. But yes, went to the cinema the other night and saw the new horror Insidious, and I should start by saying that I thoroughly enjoyed Saw. Now, I say that anyone who's in the know is aware that it's kind of from the same team, James Wan and Lee Whannell. Like I say, I enjoyed Saw, and it was suspenseful, it was fun, and that first film, Wan was sort of almost Hitchcockian in his approach. To an extent, I enjoyed Saw 2, but I think one of the reasons I enjoyed those first two films is Lee Whannell, who stars in them, but isn't really given the credit for the writing, and really he's the reason that Saw exists. It's that given that Insidious is by these, it's the same team back again, I was looking forward to a film that would be sort of, intelligent, and it would get away from all the recent sort of torture porn, and I wasn't particularly impressed with Paranormal Activity, although others seem to have been more so. I certainly wasn't impressed with Paranormal Activity 2. That was pointless. Like I say, I was expecting sort of a really good psychological horror film, and the creepy, back to sort of old school, and in some respects it does kind of do it. It is successful to a degree. Awful lot of flaws, which I'm going to get to. First of all, I should just say some of the good stuff. Credit's got to go to it for great casting. The cast to Insidious is really good, and in fact, it's one of the things about the film that is flawless. I really like Patrick Wilson as the dad. He's in Hard Candy, and he's also in the A-Team, amongst other things. If you're not that familiar with his work, see a bit more. If you get to see more Patrick Wilson, he's also in The Independent with Kate Winslet, the Little Children. Very good. I really recommend watching him. He's a really good actor, and he holds up really well in this. Really, really, really good. Rose Byrne is the mother, and I can't pull anything immediately to mind off the top of my head, but I know I was familiar with her. And again, perfectly fine. Lynn Shay, and I have to admit I had to look her up, because she's one of these character actresses who turns up everywhere, and but you just never sort of remember why you know her. But Nightmare on Elm Street, My Sister's Keeper, Snakes on a Plane, a lot of TV drama. She's and if you look her up on IMDb, it's a ridiculously long list. Very, very good. Barbara Hershey as Patrick Wilson's character's mother. Very good. We last saw her in Black Swan, and she's just great. And it's kind of, in that is sort of one of the crimes of the film. They find themselves either doing things that don't really make sense, or are really silly, or worst of all, as in the case of, say, Barbara Hershey, not really getting to do anything. When you've got some formidable actors to work with, it's kind of a shame to see them wasted. But like I say, it's nothing against the cast. The performances are the least of the problems of the film, actually. Ultimately, they're one of the stronger elements of it. Wan and Whannell do a really, really good job for the first half of the film, setting up this haunted house thing, and they go through, the haunting of the initial house, the family move. That's not a spoiler. If you've seen the trailer, they move. You know that the point of the story isn't that the house is haunted. It's one of the strap lines of the film, so it's not spoiling anything to say they do move, and that's pretty unique. I don't know that there's another, apart from the end of Poltergeist, like the end. I don't think I know another kind of haunting film where they make the decision. You know, you see them actually say, "We're getting out of here," and that's quite unique. Correct me if I'm wrong. I can't think of one, but I found that quite a nice moment that they actually move. And then, of course, it continues because, as we know, the boy's haunted, not the house. And they do a really good job in that first half of doing this really, really slow pace. I mean, I've not seen anything paced like this since The Exorcist. Some people would even say it's too slow. But I really like that kind of slow burn, and it's all about shadow and creepiness and building a tension really slowly and telling a story. And you really kind of get into this relationship and watching Wilson and Byrne on screen together. They've got a nice chemistry, and one of my favourite scenes in the film is not horrific at all. It's just a play between them in bed one night. There's just this nice little. I wouldn't be surprised if it was sort of improv. I think Wan does better at creating the kind of creepy, tense, what the hell's going to happen sort of thing than Paranormal Activity did for me. The greatness of it is that it moves so slowly and it's so apparently uneventful, but it doesn't piss you off. It takes you to a point of saying, oh, come on, what's going to happen? Which only raises the sort of tension and the discomfort with what's going on. And it's kind of like it's a high tension wire just getting more and more tense, and you're getting on the edge of your seat and you're waiting. It's gonna go. It's got to go mental soon, or something really awful has got to happen, and you're just sort of waiting for it. And that element of it is really, really good. The problem is that emphasises how bad the second half of the film is. It gets to a point where they introduce the parapsychologist people, which is a direct lift from Poltergeist, and in actual fact, this film wears all the influences. It has no shame in showing off its influences and I say ripping off, kind of tipping the hat in some cases a bit too much to other masterpieces of the genre. You don't have to look far. You don't really have to be looking at all to see Poltergeist in it. I don't know if it was Whannell's choice to change gear, or if it was a production decision, because it was the producers of Paranormal saying, you need to get it away, this can't be so similar to Paranormal Activity. But whoever's choice it was, it was a bad one, because once you go into that kind of Poltergeist thing, it becomes a bad reworking of the Poltergeist idea. It's the same setup of, woman and two guys doing the thing. And, that's right, the first half also, although not quite as good, called to mind The Orphanage a little bit. If you've seen the Del Toro produced Orphanage, I mean, I'm not suggesting it's anywhere near as good for creep factor, but the first half of the film is in that territory. And so if you enjoyed that, and all the best stuff about Paranormal Activity, like I say, sorry to hark back to it, but you will enjoy the first half of this film very much. In that first half, the jump scares... sorry, I know I've wandered off, but the jump scares are incredible. They're some of the best jump scares I've seen. Now, it relies a little too heavily on them, but you will jump in this film. They are really well done. They say it's not hard. Jump scares are cheap because it's not hard to make someone jump, but I thought that this film was genuinely good at creating the jump scare moment. Anyway, back to the second half. The explanation of things, the point where the film reaches this moment where we say, okay, we're going to tell you what's happened, and we're going to set up the second half of the film. The explanation, like I say, bad reworking of Poltergeist, and all the previously scary techniques, all the stuff that was working so well for the film in the first half, falls away, and is replaced by this sort of ham-fisted effects and dodgy makeup. I felt like too much was shown, and then due to the look of it, there was an element of it. Certain parts of it, particularly towards the end of the film, had a certain Nightmare on Elm Street vibe going on. It was certainly tipping the hat to that film, but it wasn't doing it very well. It was sort of out of place, and I felt like I'd sort of moved into another movie, which was a shame. It all starts to become a bit laughable. and the on-screen, all the stuff going on gets more and more silly, and of course the more and more silly it gets, the less scary it gets. It goes from scary horror film to being, it ends up more like a creepy computer game. Wait, if you've played a creepy computer game, and it's interesting because somebody I saw it with, just a couple of minutes after I'd thought this, said it out loud. They said, "Oh, it reminds me of," and they mentioned a game, and it kind of, the proof was in the pudding for me. I thought, well, yeah, that's what I thought. It looks like a computer game now. It's not an actual horror movie anymore. There's an introduction of comedy with the parapsychologists, and although the jokes are funny, oh, and Lee Wanell is one of the parapsychologists, interestingly, and they introduced this comedy, and the jokes are honestly very funny. We did giggle, and that was the problem. The jokes couldn't have been more out of place and more misjudged. You know, they belonged. Somebody said after that the jokes belonged in a scary movie film. They were those kind of jokes. It was like, what are you doing? You've turned this into complete caricature. So I didn't like that. And it really starts from that point, from when the parapsychologists come in and or the investigative team come in and explain it. That's where it starts going downhill, and it never really picks back up. Because it's also the point where, of course, as I've said, you stop being scared. And when a film is going towards its final act, and it's meant to be getting more tense, and it's meant to be getting climatic and more scary, you've been lost, and you're just not getting it anymore, you know. And it's a shame, because they were going for climatic and intense and scary. They thought that the gear change, they obviously thought the gear change would be sort of upping the ante, and actually it kind of ruined everything they'd done in the first half. Real shame. Speaking of the final act, I just thought it was absurd, and a finale that's really silly. And when we walked out, you start discussing it, and it doesn't take long for you to realise that there's loads of plot holes, and lots of stuff that's been left open. Whether it's intentional for a sequel, I don't know. The fact that, you know, the producers are Paranormal Activity guys, it wouldn't surprise me if there was an Insidious 2. It has this sort of odd ring about it, Insidious 2. I can just sort of see it. And that's really sad, because, you know, this had the potential to be a really terrifying one-off, you know, psychological horror film, rather than the sort of silly theme park walkthrough that it becomes in the end. So, you know, all in all, at the point where, you know, the team come in, have their little chat, and at the point where the father, you know, Patrick Wilson, does the denial bit from Paranormal Activity, which I would just make a point is done so much better in this film and so much more realistically. Again, one of my favourite scenes is, you know, he's kind of had enough. He's put up with it for the sake of his wife. He's moved house for her, as he puts it, and now he's not getting his son involved as well in all this. And I have to say, it's really convincing, and he's an interesting character, because as much as at no point, unlike, say, in Paranormal Activity films, that's my dog, unlike the Paranormal Activity films, where you just hate the dad character because it's unrealistic and stupid, in this, actually, if anything, you kind of empathise with the father. It's a nice thing to see. And like I say, the first half of the film really does show that James Wan does have a talent. He can certainly, and it's so nice to see him getting away and doing something else. But you end up sort of just thinking that everything seems a bit silly, and it's lost its scare factor, and yeah, so worth seeing in a cinema screen with a whole load of people, for the jump scares, and, you know, for the sort of experience. But all I would say is, do be aware that it gets silly, it gets more silly, ends up not being scary, and then when you walk out, you'll realise how much hasn't been tied up. Get ready for the sequel. I wouldn't be at all surprised. Thanks. Bye.